Hello, everybody. How are you? All right, let's get the tones going here. Wow. Man, is that strong or what? It's like the whole air has just, I don't know, a shift. This last 6, 7, 8 days, maybe actually longer than that, about 10 or so have, boy, put that in your headphones and man, it's like far out. It's like, all right, I'm in no matter what. But yeah, this whole retrograde, the stuff that it does to us. And, I think there's good evidence that sometimes, the crap rolls uphill and downhill at the same time. But hey, everyone, how are y'all doing? Hey, Kaz, how you doing? Welcome all the moderators. Thank you for joining us today. Hello, Lori and Darth, Sabrina and Charlotte. Good to see you. And Victor, Mary, good to see you. Lori. Hey, David Barry. Peace, my friend. Robert, good to see you, my friend. And Heather and Constance, good to see you. And Pure Love Ascension, love it, love it. Hey, Twisted Isby, how are you? Hey, Ann, good to see you. Gary, far out, lost in space, hello, good to see you. And Gaza, so many groovy people, no doubt about it. Hey, T-Cat, good to see you. Joyce, hello, and favor right back at ya. In fact, let me just invoke favor upon all of us this day. I don't know about you, but I could use a double portion. When I was a Christian, I always found the Old Testament to be interesting. And, Elijah, when Elijah was being lifted up in the flying saucer, said, well, he says, what do I got to do to get rid of you? And he says, I want a double portion of what you had. So we're just going to say a double portion of favor be upon all of us this day. Nothing missing, nothing broken be found in our lives. I have a very good friend of mine, Chris, whose daughter has just suddenly gotten ill. So community, let's just send out some healing thoughts to Chris's daughter. And I say whatever's been attacking that child's body has to leave it. Get out of Dodge, because we're covering her with a lot of positive healing energy, and it works. Hey, we talked about it yesterday. Wasn't that a fantastic show with Trina? Holy crap, Ola, man, that was just freaking far out. Tune into those second look programs. There lots of stuff coming out of there on those. Thank you, Dana. Double healing. Yes. So we call it and we make it so. We can materialize anything we want. Let me tell you something. It's amazing sometimes when you come under attack, and many of us do. We all do. I don't know of anyone who doesn't, but, and sometimes the attacks, they seem to be coming so randomly out of nowhere. And many times you're sitting there going, now what brought this on? Some people would say, well, it's the karma that's coming. No. Listen, I believe in the 7 principles. I believe that every paradox can be solved, and that in fact, balance can and will be achieved in all things, including karma. There has to be a neutral factor, right? I mean, you read so often it's either all bad karma or all good karma. What if it's just neutral? No karma at all. I'll take that bucket. Thank you, Monty Hall. Anyway, Lois sent me a note, and thank you for everyone who made a donation on Friday to her food pantry. I know that there are going to be continued donations made there. Folks, we help feed a lot of people. And all of you that participated in that, and even those who could not, but were part of the group and part of the whole intent, thank you. I speak for Cajun Queen Tarot because I got the mic. And she thanks you. I thank you. And that's what we're all about here. So, and happy birthday to you if you're having one. Enjoy it. Tomorrow night, I'm going to, on the Steiger Perspective over in the artistfirst.com radio network, the program is going to be called The Flipped Has Flopped. All right. And what we're going to be talking about is that the earth, folks, this is reality. This is not what the government is not telling you. I mean, we know. We have the evidence. We're all observers. We're sharp people. We sift through the manure, and we get what's really going on. And the UN is now admitting it. Well, thank you, Alexandro. That is, what is the family's name? And tonight I will speak with the 12 gods. Okay. I don't know if I can get a last name, but it is Chris. And I wish I knew his daughter's name, but I do not. But thank you. That's so kind of you. This is what we know. Our climate is changing. This is not about global warming. This is about the one thing that you don't hear in all of the mainstream media and all the hype that's going on. The crazies is what I've called them. They become fanatics, as bad as some, religious fanatics. The fact is, folks, you and I are living in a magnetic pole reversal. Now, I don't know if it's going to be a complete reversal. It's very obvious that it's going to be in the equator. That is a fact. I may not see it. I don't know. They're anticipating, and by all the documents, and we're going to be reading one today, probably 22, 24 years. They know it's coming. It can't be stopped. This is reality. And so anyway, we know that the shift is shifting. And here's the other thing, folks. You can go over. Ben Davidson did a great movie on this. The interesting thing about when I was talking about Elijah, I remember the book of Joshua, that the sun stood still, did not move for 24 hours. We know that there's corresponding written evidence around the world that other cultures saw what they thought was the never-ending night. Some in the world saw the dawn. It never ended, and it is very evident that the Earth reversed in spinning. It's going to happen again, and go watch Ben's movie. That's the best thing to do, because I can just tell you, it's not as what you think it is. The Earth spins 1,000 miles an hour, but if you do the math, it's probably going to have effect of about 15 miles an hour is what it would feel like a wind when the reversal starts, and it's already starting. So think about this. So east will now be north, west will be south, and either way you look at it, it's going to be rough times. So there you go. Check it out. I've done videos on this because the evidence is now here. We are currently studying, and we're discussing, reincarnation and channeling. Okay. We found that both of them are directly connected. So I began to think about this, and I said, well, now wait a minute. If we're studying evidence that both of those phenomenon do exist,
All right, so that would imply that we've had previous lives, right? On Earth, correct? One would assume. Could have been Mars, could have been somewhere else. But here's the thing. That would mean that you and I have endured, experienced, and most likely were killed in an Earth catastrophe. Now, the question I thought about when I was putting this show together today was like, okay, now wait a minute. All right, we know there's been collapse of culture, civilizations. We know that. We're now understanding that our sun is not as stable as they thought. If we survive, and it appears our government, as other governments are taking extensive steps to bring at least a pretty good size of the population underground. I don't think it's going to be everybody. But nevertheless, you and I have experienced this before. Now, what happens when there's that collapse? Where do all the souls go? I mean, is there a coffee and smoking lounge up there? I mean, are they serving margaritas at happy hour because, you know, the earth is closed? I don't know. I mean, it's a question to ponder, right? So it must mean that there's a hell of a backup, traffic jam of souls wanting, but you know what? The humans aren't copulating because they just got their ass kicked by a solar flash, a micronova. Speaking of which, let me pull this up. So I did this thing back earlier this year. We talked about planet amnesia, which is now becoming very evident. We know what probably happened now. Our species, our ancestors, meaning us if we live through that, right? We got annihilated, baby. It's happened before. It's going to happen again. You know, the ancients told us about this. They saw the moon on fire. Well, yeah, that's why there's all the glass up there. That's why the Chinese are over on the dark side of the moon looking at one particular crater. And I think they found what they were looking for and what we have suspected. Now, the question is, what do you do with this? Our ancestors wrote that when the effect hit us, that people lost their minds. There was no constraint on any vices, kind of like wild in the streets. So we know that it's happening, folks. Ain't going to happen, been happening. And you and I are now living in a time where it's accelerating. May not be, you know, you figure 24 years for me, I'll be in my 80s. But you think about you millennials, you're going to be where I'm at. I think I need to put on pause, folks. I know this is, but I have a package that I need. So please bear with me 1 minute. Thank you. Yes, I am back. Thank you for your patience on that. You know, sometimes you have to get those packages. Oh, hey, you can't see me. Well, that's probably a good reason why you can't. There we go. I'm back. And so getting back in focus. So picking up right where we left off, because this is happening. It's not any longer make believe. We're living it. And as I was saying, you millennials, our grandchildren, we think about this quite often. They're going to be in their prime of life. It's funny. I read a story about how millennials are now trying to get ahead of even the Gen Xers on living to be 120, 150. And I'm thinking, well, okay, so let's say you achieve that. What is the world going to be like? It's very obvious that, we're not going to be able to live on the surface, and woe into the person that is actually living on the surface on that. So changes, in this one here, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I really want to get into the Adam and Eve. And I know Rex over at Leak Project did a great video on this. Ben has done, it's been a number of them done. But the thing that gets me is that we now know that there was something very recent. I don't know if this has happened before, recently. I don't know. We discussed this in length, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but we went through all the maps. It shows clearly that Antarctica was not covered with ice. And whatever the heck, but what's really most important about this, folks, is that understand, as I'm sure all you know, magnetic south, it's left the building. It's left Antarctica. It's no longer there. It's out in the ocean and heading to its destination where we know something is about to take place. So, we're understanding that our sun has these solar flash events. It's being postulized in theory that our sun is the whole region of space we're in is very dusty. Apparently, stars can collect dust, and when it does, it's like a pressure cooker. So anyway, something is definitely happening. It's happened before. The evidence is everywhere. Primarily, what a lot of people don't understand what the Apollo missions were about was to confirm this. So who knows how long our scientists have known this? It's very obvious that it's a reset, and that's exactly what I called it, and that's what it'll look like. But any case, so are we going to get ourselves, out of it? I don't know. Maybe not. It's hard to really say. I hope we do. I do know this, where climate change is concerned, it's just going to get worse. I mean, when your magnetic poles are shifting, the question is, are we going to be like a Neptune? Are we going to see how Neptune went on its side? Is that what the Earth is about to experience? And how long will that experience last? There's a lot of theories out there. And I'm getting back to the whole thing that if we are eternal beings, if reincarnation is in fact, when you study the religions, a lot of them back that up. Unfortunately, the Cathars, who saw that in the early versions of Christianity, it didn't work out so far. And that's one of the reasons why the papacy had them out. Anyway, I digress. So it means that probably we've seen this before, and I think the implications are huge. What does this mean for us? Is this the reset? Is this the thing that they're going to find out? Are we going to be the first humans to actually write about this as a living experience? Is going to be underground going to be good enough for us? Is this the reason why they're almost getting us into this electronic net? Is that going to be easier for, you know, the ones that are going to be allowed to go underground and the ones that are going to be allowed to go up. The question, or stay on the top, which is not going to be a fun place. Dramatic changes. And the question I have with all these underground cities, I mean, the United States has a complete network going from the East Coast all the way here to the Rockies, and now extending past the Rockies. Is it going to be stable enough if there is a dramatic shift to the tectonic plates? I don't know. Are you building yourself your own coffin? Maybe those engineers down there. We have suspected here where I live for some time that you can hear some of this stuff. I've picked up some recordings that I'm going, what the hell is that? Don't know. Exactly. Wayne, you're asking the right questions. And listen, how about adding this to the equation, ladies and gentlemen? Here in the United States, in fact, let me just say, this is kind of be picked up on the radio show, but I'll bring it out here, and it's worthy to discuss. So Lagarde, who is the president of the IMS, that's the International Monetary Fund, World Bank, she said that the world is in over 122, maybe it's $133 trillion. All right. The United States, with everything we've committed to, obligated to, 120 trillion. We have Congress now spending money like right and left. You know, while they're doing the Clown Act, no one's talking about why is it that they're not doing anything. But yet, we are spending money at a rate, well, as I have said, and on the record, it looks as though we're not ever going to pay it back. Guess what? We're not going to pay it back. Ain't nothing going to be here in the semblance of us going back. And just get ready, folks. This is not fear porn. This is just scientific fact. Listen, when the UN and the IPCC, that's the UN's weather, department over there, they have rebuked these weather extremists with their fanatical policies and actions. They're saying you folks are crazy. Listen, everyone now knows all the climate models are wrong. And coming out in 2022, when the UN will issue the new IPCC report, they're going to tell you something that is going to be factored into the models that are being built right now. That's the cosmic ray particles. And they're going to actually factor in the sun. You see the models that everyone's going nuts on, and you see California going off in the deep end. Folks, listen, we love our planet. We should love our planet more. But the fanatics that are taking place now, there's no science. The article about the 11,000 scientists that signed off on the climate emergency, they weren't scientists at all. In fact, they've done an audit of that. They can't find hardly anyone that is a legitimate PhD. And that was the requirement. Any jackass could have gone and signed it, and many jackasses did sign it. But you see, the news found it to be something that they can do it. But anyway, oh boy. But let's talk about something, again, in our reading as we continue to go through our journey on this. I mean, all right, if we reincarnate, or even if you say, well, I don't believe in reincarnation, then what the hell are you going to do afterwards? You're going to tell me you figured it all out here? What, do you think you're going to get an upgrade model when you pass over? They ain't showing that. So this is what the CIA, our government, it may have, many theorize that it may have been what Kennedy was assassinated over. Who knows? And how they knew Adam and Eve was 11,500 years ago, that Noah was 6,500 years ago. How did that happen? I don't know either. But they say that this is how it's going to start. It'll start with a rumble. And I often think about those signs, and it's odd because the sounds that were coming from the sky and the ground, they've stopped. But how many of you remember that back in 2014, 2015, 2016, I think it went into 17, all around the world, we were hearing these sounds. I recorded it right here out my back door. Freakiest thing I ever heard. Posted it as well. And I often wonder, were those evidence of signs of something we just didn't get? Here it says, with a rumble so low as to an inaudible growing, throbbing, then fuming into a thundering roar, the earthquake starts. It's not like any earthquake in recorded history. In California, the mountains shake like ferns in a breeze. The mighty Pacific rears back and piles up into a mountain of water more than 2 miles high, then starts its race eastward. I don't know. That sounds like a bad day. Now, the question is you read this, and by the way, if you don't have it, it's easily available online. I know that David put it over on the Crystal Network as well. Get it and read it. It's well worth at least to see. And we know the whole thing. Again, go over to Ben Davidson's channel, check out the Catastrophic, the Earth Catastrophe series, and he'll give it to you. Good motion. He did a great job in production of that. Really, I like it when, people put the money and the investment into really doing, very first-rate type presentations. Way to go, Ben. So there have been reports. I heard back in the mid-'80s that with Reagan, that it is said and rumored that when Reagan found out about this, it was almost more than his soul could bear. Because the reality is, and again, I don't know how big these cities are that they're building underneath there, but, the United States is, somewhere, 360 million. I don't know how you move 360 million people. I don't think you do. I think you basically, I guess, are going to try to do the whole caste system. So it goes on to say that the continent, 1,000 miles an hour, this is how fast this thing is going to come across. And apparently there are ancient writings of man seeing this. I don't know. It's the whole idea of the tectonic shifting. A lot of theories on that. Some say it takes thousands of years. Others postulate that, it could happen within hours. I have a chapter in my book that deals with this. Actually, I wrote this back in 2004, but it's so appropriate. It's going to be a part of the book. And the evidence is showing what was started to be showing when I was researching this deeply in 2004, that, yeah, there's evidence that these weren't, gradual shifts. There is evidence that continents changed literally in a day. If we are in fact heading for, and we are, for a magnetic, let's just say, shift, are the continents, is the tectonic plate that floats on the sea of magma, how is that not going to be impacted? That's the concern. And as it says in this one here, this actually, the sublayer of the earth breaks and spreads up on top. That's a bad day. If you're caught in that, and what I can't figure out, so let's say you're underground, right? Are you so confident that there's not going to be a fissure that would open up underneath and inundate you with, hot inner molten material? I don't know. I like here, they said, within 3 hours, the fantastic wall of water moves across the continent, burying the wind-ravaged land under 2 miles of water, seething water. We've all seen the maps. I did a whole show on it, videos, look in the archives. So here's what they know. In a fraction of a day, all civilization is gone. Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, Dallas, New York, they're gone. I live literally, I can see Pikes Peak from where I'm at. Literally. I could be there in less than 40 minutes. So it says a few lucky ones who managed to find shelter from the screaming winds on the lee side of Pikes Peak watched the sea of molten fire break through the quaking valleys below. Now, it's interesting, as anyone who's ever been in the Denver area or been up in the Rocky Mountains, as you are coming out of the mountains and you look down into the Denver area and off into the plains, you could imagine this very, very easily. So, not a good day in America, not a very good day anywhere. It says only the great mountains, such as the ones, the Rocky Mountains, where we're at. I mean, we have 14ers, 14,000 feet peak. But hey, I don't know if surviving is actually the best thing here. I mean, water, food. Says North America is not alone in her death throes. Central America suffers the same. They're gone. South America finds the Andes not high enough to stop the cataclysmic violence pounded out by the nature in her berserk rage. So in less than a day, Ecuador, Peru, and Western Brazil are shaken madly by the devastating earthquake, burned by molten earth fire, buried under cubic miles of torrential Pacific seas, and then turned into a frozen hell. Everything freezes. Man, beast, plant, mud. Now, I'm going to stop here. Get the document. Read it. It's well worth it. You'll appreciate it. Now, many who studied the mud fossil theory could be that was a precursor to a much bigger event. Very interesting evidence when you look into that. But nevertheless, so how does this work? And it's something that I wonder that if you were a conscious being alive in one of these events, would you really want to remember? That's the question I have. I mean, there have been scenarios written again in a lot of the ancient literature backs up this. Our ancestors said at one time Saturn was so big in our sky, it was called the Golden Era because apparently our star wasn't here. Now, go to the Thunderbolts Project, watch the movie, the scenes from I think, what is it? The Alien Skies. Then something happened. They're postulating that we have entered into a current and it's about to, have even more effect on our sun. Listen, I watch it every day. I'm one of those, people that I got, what is the KP index? What has it been doing? And, I've been with Ben Davidson, I think, since 2013, and you learn a lot. And I know that, something's wrong with our star. And who'd ever thought that a star can collect dust? So, yeah. Someone says, a lot of this seems like fear porn distraction built on principles that in themselves were lies, not denying the shift ever happened, just not anything like this has been commonly proposed. Cayce, I think I'll have to take exception. If you do the studies, no. The bronze books, go and read the Colburn Bible. It's got many tales from many different cultures of cataclysms. I think, and listening, the Carrington event happened. We know that the telegraphs around the world, particularly in the United States, we took the full brunt of it, were on fire. And the operators were being literally electrocuted from touching the telegraphic instruments. If it hit today, we'd be in the dark ages. So I don't know. It really kind of goes. I listen. I've been at this long enough to know that I don't know history. We don't know history. We're fed a line as to what history is. Listen, I used to believe that the Bible was real, that the events actually happened, that it was an historical document. No, it's a literary work. Modern day, and here's the other good thing, folks, blow your mind on this one. The interesting thing is modern day Christianity is a new religion. It's less than 500 years old. So how could they have known everything of the past? Yeah, it's weird, folks. It's weird. And if you go and do the, go over, someone has a YouTube channel. In fact, I think it's Mud Fossil University, I think. Go and check it out. Go with an open mind and look at the evidence that they present. And if these solar flashes have happened before, we live under, I think, somewhat of a false sense of security that our sun is a very stable star, that it's going to do the same thing year after year, decade after decade, millennium after millennium. No, we don't know our sun. A lot of our knowledge, particularly within the last decade and a half, completely wiped out all the knowledge of earlier times. And I contend it's happening. I've experienced here, I think it was, I still got the graph. It was June 22nd, 2015, when the Earth experienced a temporary magnetic reversal. Yes. In fact, I'll pull it up tomorrow. I could go hunting for it now, but that's not what we're here for. I saved the chart, saved the graph, and it lasted for about 2.5 hours. Yes. We were in a restaurant, my wife and I, and we had our compasses that we carry. We even had the electronic compass. And we were in a restaurant, and it was freaking weird because the compasses were all reversed. Took pictures of it, posted it. We brought other people who had their electronic compasses on their phones, iPhones, Google. All of them were doing the same thing. Spell that, please. Spell what? I'm trying to read that. So, see, I witnessed that. I know that that's real. I was that back in those days. I was with Steve Olson. We were documenting the strangest occurrence. Secchi was. We still had Stereo B, and the stuff that we were seeing was just off the freaking scale. Was that the first wave? I think it may have been exactly that. Well, Cayce, I'm not here to debate on the fact of I'm not an astrophysicist. I am a layman, and I just look at the data. You can look at the data. I don't know how you can say that if, as an avid follower of space weather, and I mean literally, I get up every day and look at exactly what Secchi is doing. I look at all of the telemetry that's coming in. We can see it. I can see when there's a magnetic disturbance. Happened last week. It's the first one we've seen in a while. So anyway, we're not here to take away from the whole group. Do your own research and, draw your own conclusions. That's how we roll here. And we're happy that no matter what your conclusion is, that you're a part of the group, because diversity brings us much further in expanding our awareness. Diversity is good. And I like counter thoughts because, that's how we learn. Just don't get emotional about it. See, that's why I ask people all the time, so why would God want worshipers? I mean, Captain Kirk was right. What would God need with a starship? But yeah, you read Ezekiel, that's exactly what they come in. So anyway, I digress. I love y'all. Yeah. Y'all are just so very cool. So I got another story on reincarnation. And this one takes place in the United States. And I find it fascinating that if these stories are, well, thank you, Paul. Peace. Like the best. If it's not true, then these children have some of the most remarkable cognitive imaginations. Granted, we all did as kids. We all loved playing by ourselves, and I was fortunately part of that generation. We didn't have electronic toys. What we had was here. And, true story. I digress here a little bit. Christmas 1960. Yeah. Yes, 1960. My grandparents bought me a wood engraving set. I was 5 years old. Yeah. Do y'all know what a wood engraving? How many of you are old enough to actually remember that? Yeah. Today, that would be banned in virtually every state. I burnt the fire out of my fingers many a times, burning that thing into a lot of different wood. But how many of y'all remember that? I remember the first chemistry set I got. You can't buy that today. They put stuff you could blow up stuff with it in there. But that was just the time, we had our imaginations. And so, but I can't really actually recall having distinct memories of a previous life. So our story today, isn't that, I could actually make a whole series on that one. Our story today leads us into a community of like any other community. All right. So this one takes place in the United States. This is the case of Joe Wilk. And let's read. In fact, let me bring that up here. I didn't know that many of you read along with me, which is cool. All right. The 3-year-old girl from Iowa suddenly told her parents that she used to be called Joe Wilk. She was growing up in a strictly Catholic family in which any discussion on the subject of reincarnation was forbidden. The girl also told her parents that her wife was called Sheila and that they had both been fatally injured in a motorbike accident on the 20th of July, 1975 in Brookfield, Illinois. Professor Benjeri had heard of the claims this girl had made and asked her to tell him everything once more. He then wrote to Dr. Adrian Finkelstein, who was living in Chicago, asking him to find out whether there was any truth in what the girl was saying. Dr. Adrian wrote back saying the police investigation stated that a Joseph Wilkie, and I think it may be Wilkie, and his wife from Brookfield had died on the 20th of July, 1975 at 5:33 p.m. in an accident involving his Honda motorbike. A skeptic could well say that someone was playing games with Dr. Benjeri, I had that right, by telling a 3-year-old girl about an accident he had heard about, and then telling the girl to recount the story to the research scientist as if it was her own past life. A little girl would not fool Professor Benjeri, an experienced research scientist. I will now tell you about another case that this professor investigated, in which, in my eyes, is even stronger proof of reincarnation. In Adana, on the southern coast of Turkey, lived Muhammad, and I tell you what, Al-Tiglish and his family. One day, his 2-year-old son said to him, I don't want to live here anymore. I want to go back to my home and children. His father said, what did you just say, Ismail? Don't call me Ismail. My name is Albert, the child replied. His father then wanted to know from where he got these ideas. His son explained that his real name was Albert Zumas, and that he had been the owner of a large garden nursery until 3 men had broken in and killed him. Wow. It's got to be freakily weird, doesn't it, to remember a death that you experienced? His father clearly remembered that several months before the birth of his son, a man named Albert Zumas, the owner of a large garden center who lived just a kilometer away from Mr. Al-Tiglish, had been killed with an iron bar by 3 men. Oh, man, that sucks. There had been many newspaper reports about the incident, which had happened on the 31st of January, 1956. Mr. Sumas had employed 3 men who applied for the job in one of his garden centers. These 3 men had locked him into a shed and had murdered him. After that, they had broken into the house and had killed his second wife and her 2 children. Wow. The 3 murderers were caught after a sensational trial. 2 of them were hanged, while the 3rd died in prison. Ismail continued to insist that he is Albert and repeatedly begged his father to take him to his previous home. He often cried out in his sleep, Gulstrain, Gulstrain, and woke up crying. His parents knew that this person he was calling in his sleep was his daughter from his past life, since he had told his parents about her. When Ismail was about 3 years old, his father finally agreed for him to be taken to the house of the murdered gardener. 11 people accompanied him. Ismail insisted that no one should show him where the house is, for he claimed he could find his way there. Even though his companions tried to mislead him several times, Ismail continued on his way, knowing exactly where he was going. The boy had never walked this way before. When they had entered the house, there was about 30 people waiting for him. They wanted to put the boy to test to see whether he would recognize members of his former family. We've read that they sing do. He immediately went up to one of the women, called her by name, and told the others that this was his first wife. Then he saw his former daughter, whom he had called out by name with such longing in his sleep. The same happened with his second daughter and his son, who was also present. Finally, he said, "Now I want to show you where I was murdered." He led them to the shed in which the brutal crime had been committed. There he pointed out certain things that had since changed. All these events occurred in a Muslim country in which the Islamic Church forbids the belief in reincarnation and has certainly never taught it. There are smaller sects, such as the Alevites and the Sufis, who do believe in reincarnation. The newspaper published 2 articles about this family's reunion. One story read as follows. The boy Ishmael had recognized an ice cream vendor and had called him by name and asking him, "Do you remember me?" The man said no. And Ishmael continued, "I am Albert. In the past, you used to sell watermelons and vegetables instead of ice cream." The salesman agreed that this was so. The boy also told him that he had been one who had, well, there you go, circumcised him a long ago. Well, that's a little personal, but I think, to remember that, I don't remember that. Don't want to. By now, the ice cream salesman was also convinced that this boy had really been the nursery owner he had once known. One day, Ismail met a man and reminded him that he had lent him some money when he was Albert, and that he still owed this money to the Shazamas family. The man agreed that this is true. Wow. Talk about debt following you, huh? Another time he saw a man who was leading a cow on a rope. Ismail talked to him and asked whether he was the yellow one that used to belong to Mr. Samzus. The man told him it was. Professor Benjari is absolutely convinced that none of these stories were invented. The 2 families had nothing to gain by telling lies, since that would well bring them into conflict with their religious leaders. We know that would really suck. When Professor Benjari was investigating this case, he was interviewing the families. He was asked to keep quiet about things he was told. Besides, those families avoided each other. The murder victim's family was probably accusing Ismail's family of having started all this talk. And as you can see from the story, children's memories of past lives are not restricted to countries in which the belief in reincarnation is common, but are also found in those where such belief is frowned upon. Now, I'm going to end there because we get into another one. But folks, I mean, come on. This is, I don't know. What do you say? Sometimes it seems like we are truly down in the rabbit hole, right? But I often wonder, what would the stairway to heaven look like? How would you know? Do you think a stairway is straight? Do you think a stairway cannot curve, bend, fold? I often wonder because I see sometimes that if I'm in a hole, I have no light. And what we're studying certainly brings forth knowledge. Knowledge is light. Light is information. I think we truly are onto that path. We did the stair. I just think that Sometimes we think it's this grand staircase, and it is not. Thank you, Marguerite. Thank you all. Y'all are just some really very, very thank you. So kind comments. Yeah, as I say, I'm just reading someone. The stairway is an upward motion, I guess. Yeah, I think it is. Isn't that? I mean, isn't a stair? Oh, but think about this now. A stairway can go either up or down. If it has steps, I guess it could go, what, east and west, right and left? I don't know. Would a moving sidewalk be considered a stairway or a version of one? Yeah, they are kind of neat stories. They really are. I agree with Cayce. So we're going to continue this. I mean, and we haven't gotten back into the channeling part, but you know what we're doing. And by the way, I got the group. I'll be getting an email out here. Just give me some time. But this adds to this, because the question I would want to ask now, you know, when Patrick and I were talking with the planets, and I missed that, if we had this kind of knowledge, now the sun did tell us that it was about to micronova and it had done it in the past. Well, there you go. Got a few more questions for Mother Earth now. I mean, but think about us. I can't accept that we're the epitome of intelligence, not even on this planet. We can trace virtually every animal species back to what we perceive to be their beginnings. But we don't have a freaking clue about us. Like, well, where did we come from? I haven't a clue. We may never know. I mean, didn't we read in the spirits that they said that they didn't know? Nobody knows. I mean, how far do you go back to infinity? Well, okay, because if infinity is in fact true, there would be no beginning, no end. A beginning and an end is constrained into a construct of space-time. So if we're outside of space-time, we only immerse ourselves into this reality where space-time is even considered to be a thought. Otherwise, in our natural form, we're not even conscious of time. We know the principles of time. I'm sure we're well versed in exactly how time is different, and that time is not a constant. We're going to get into that as well. So where did God come from? Roger, I love that, Robin. I haven't a clue. I contend that, again, the spirits told us this. They said, in the book we were reading in the spiritualist, that if man can name it, it ain't God. I believe that. I believe in the infinite being. I mean, I've come to this point at my portion of my journey, is that I have reserved the right to say I don't know, because I can't comprehend a being of that magnificent. Listen, we can all describe it as a high frequency, as a light, whatever it is. I still don't think we really can fully comprehend it. I don't know. Well, this has been a freaking wonderful hour. Thank you all. So many things that, as we continue on the progression of each of our paths, the accumulated knowledge we begin to bring in, and then we add that to our core, our core beliefs. Now, if you're like I am, and there's many of us that are, where your core belief was completely obliterated, and you had to start rebuilding that, you learn some things. The first thing I've learned There are no absolutes. Now, that seems kind of odd to come into it, but there can't be. I mean, I'll leave this earth, and if I'm quizzed before the panel, I'm going to say, and this is Bill and Ted's fabulous journey, right? There are no absolutes. And I'm going to walk away, and I'm sure I'll be singing a song of something. Who knows? All right, folks. Absolutely no absolutes. You see, that's how we work here. You know, this crazy place. I mean, it is a freaking freak show. I mean, and this whole magnetic pole shift, you know, I call it a shift, not a reversal. I mean, you got to admit that's going to be something to watch. Depends on your point of view. I mean, I'm going to have my cup of tea, have my puppy dog next to me, my wife, and we'll have cameras going. Don't know a clue if anyone sees it. Who knows? Who cares? But we'll witness it. All right, folks, I'll see you tomorrow. And Friday night, I will be over on Milky Way Messengers show. Looking forward to that, Brian. And so y'all make sure to tune in. All right, be good to yourself. You know, there is a bonding in this group. It's tangible. And thank you. Thank you for including me. It's always sucks to be outside, you know? All right. So we always ask them to come in. All right. Peace to you all. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.